right, welcome everyone to the 2024 United Wiffle Ball Contenders Bracket Draw. I'm Paul Cook. I'll be your host tonight as we go through the 40 teams in the 5 brackets that will compete this Saturday in York, Pennsylvania in the 5th annual United Wiffle World Championship Tournament. Just before we get started, we want to go through just a couple things, just to bring everyone up to date on the format, and then introduce our panel of analysts and special guests here, which we'll get to in a second. So first, for those who are unfamiliar with the format of United Wiffle Ball, let's go through that really quickly here before we get underway. So what we're going to be drawing tonight, as you see on your screen now, hopefully, are the contenders bracket. So this is our pool play. There'll be 5 pools of 8 teams. The way this works is if you win, you move over to the left side. If you lose, you move over to the right side. So everyone's going to play 3 games in pool play against a team with the same record. So everyone starts 0-0. Everyone's going to play a team that hasn't played yet, obviously. You win, you move over to the left, you play a fellow 1-0 team. You win again, you play a 2-0 team. You start 1-1, you play a 1-1 team. You start 0-2, you play an 0-2 team. And this is done just kind of match everyone up with a fair opponent through the preliminary rounds. Any team that is 1-2 or better will advance on in the tournament after this first round. The 5 0-2 teams in these 5 brackets will be eliminated. The 1-2 teams will play in a comeback round. This is a 15-team single elimination round, and the 4 teams that advance out of this will advance to the final 24. To go back here, the teams that finishes 3-0 right over here will automatically go to the top 16 on Saturday evening. So there'll be 5 teams that automatically go to the top 16, and then there'll also be 3 teams that start 2-1 and will also advance to the top 16 Saturday night. Those 3 teams that start 2-1 or that are 2-1 that advance, they have to start 2-0. It'll be the best 2-0 teams by our seedings, by our tiebreakers, and we'll go over that in a second. What those tiebreakers are. All other 2-1 teams will be in the final 24, and they'll be joined by the 4 teams that come out of the comeback bracket. And that gets us to our elimination round, which is a 24-team elimination round. It's kind of a shootout here, where we'll get down to our final 8 by the end of Saturday night under the lights at Wellspan Park. And then we'll play our final 8 on Sunday. So before we get started here in the draw, just a couple of other things of just how we're going to do this draw mechanically. We will go through, let me show right now, just kind of how this will work. We'll spin a wheel, and we'll take, each team's name that comes off. So here's kind of an example. We're going to start with the first 4 teams in Block A, then the next 4 teams in Block B, and so on. So basically, we're going to do the first half of each bracket first, and then we're going to go to the bottom half too. So again, Team 1 will play Team 2, Team 3 will play Team 4. They'll all be in Group A. Then we'll move over to Group B for the next 4 teams, and then so on down the line. We'll pause after each 4 teams to get some feedback from our esteemed analyst panel, which we'll introduce here in a second. But that's how all of that will work. No seeding on this. We're just going to, everyone, it's just complete open draw. Luck of the draw here, however it comes out, will be how teams are lined up. So we'll probably see some depth brackets. We'll probably see some easier brackets. Again, that's just the nature of this kind of open tournament. It's just kind of the luck of the draw. And again, every team's got a chance to come back. You get a tough draw, you have that comeback bracket, that chance to come back. All right. So with all of that said about our formatted stuff, this is a perfect time to bring in our tournament director, Texas Tim Dean. Tim, this is your 5th year here at UWIFF National Championship. How many national championships overall have you done? I've lost count.
This one will be 18. So when you count Golden Stick, Fast Plastic, and UWIFF, this will be the 18th national tournament that I've had the privilege of being tournament director of, and I've enjoyed all of them except the one here in Texas when it rained on the last day and really flooded us out. But really have enjoyed doing it. Looking forward to doing this again. I do want to bring up a couple of things for everybody, please. I know that you will be provided my cell phone number during tournament day. Please text me your scores. I think that will be coming in an email if it hasn't already. Please text me the scores of the winner, the score, like who you beat, like the Phenoms over the Legends 6-3, something like that, just so I will see who is playing and the correct score so I can get that done correctly. But also one thing that if Paul's not going to bring it up, there are a lot of new players in this tournament, some brand new teams. Read the rules, please, and understand the rules. If you have a question about a rule pre-tournament, clear it up by asking either a veteran that plays a lot in this format or shoot Tim or Paul a message about clarifying that rule before you go in. We have it happen every year. Everybody that is playing regular season under a whole different set of rules. And so this is the rule set. If you have not read the rules and if you're a new player, you're making a really big mistake. So make sure you read the rules and understand them.
And likewise, that's a great point, Tim. And then likewise, all the veteran players and teams, and we probably don't need to tell them this, but if you're playing a team and you could probably, tell that, if they don't know the rules or not familiar with this style, help them out. This is a gentleman's game. No one wants to win by someone not knowing the rules. So we've been really fortunate and happy in the 5 years of UWIFF where we've had this great camaraderie on the field, where we've seen these veteran teams helping out these newer teams to the style. So, please keep that up, in year 5 here and help us out with that. So any other thoughts, Tim, before we introduce our panel here?
LFG.
Let's just go. All right. All right. So let's get right to our analyst panel here. Like I said, our esteemed analysts here who will be breaking down all the matchups as we draw them through our 5 contenders bracket. We're going to go left to right here. We'll start with Nate Teagle. Nate is a Philadelphia-based player, also a one of many people that really sort of helped grow the game through all the media work they do. Nate, I'm probably going to miss some of the leagues you play in, so feel free here when I'm done to correct me on this. But you play in your local league. You played in Old Line this year, if I have that right. MLW Long Island tournament, and then some other probably local tournaments this year that he's made his way out to. So you'll see Nate around the tournament all day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, doing video, doing social media, just helping out in a variety of ways. So, please, if he comes over to you for a question, help him out. He's going to do a lot of social media. And just, again, we're really glad to have him. Really glad to have him on this panel. Then we've got Nico Ruiz from Illinois. Nico, you've also seen around the fields the last few years, doing a lot of media work for us. He's also one of the guys we're so happy to have, just, putting media out there all the time for wiffle ball, really promoting the game. Also a good young player in his own right. It will be competing in the U17 tournament this year as well. So again, if you see Nico around, give him a shout out and, anything it comes up to you, asking for any media, help him out. That just helps grow the game. And last but not least, we got Liam Porter. Liam is from Michigan. Also a really good U17 player, will be competing in the U17 tournament this year. So, make sure you check out the U17 tournament. 6 teams, but I think this is probably our most stacked. We can maybe talk to Liam and Nico a little bit about this later on, but I think this is the most stacked U17 MLW tournament that we've had by far. So make sure you check that out all weekend long, starting Saturday evening and then elimination round on Sunday. We're doing something different this year. We're going to bring the U17 fields in more towards field number 1. So we're going to kind of everything together all the big action sort of together up close behind home plate. So make sure you check out those U17 games if you haven't before, because that's where the future of wiffle ball's playing. All right. So enough of us talking. Let's get this underway. Like I said, we're going to go through the first four teams to get first two games in block A first, and then we'll move on. Tim, if you want to bring up the wheel now. Again, if you watched basically any wiffle ball draw, it's going to work the same way. We're just going to spin this wheel. A team's going to come off. They'll go into a slot. And again, when we get done with the first four teams, we'll pause here for some instant feedback and reaction on this. So whenever you're ready, Tim, spin the wheel. All right. Blue balls out of Ridley Park are team number 1. And they will be playing the New York Meats. Meats one of the more prolific teams in UWIFF history, making 3 Final Eights. C4 is team number 3. They'll take on in their first game SoCal Wiffle. So that's a rematch of a first round game last year. These two teams met very first game last year as well. All right, so we'll pause here, Tim. Let me share my screen. All right, and we'll take a look here at our first 2 games in Group A. So Blue Balls, New York Meats. New York Meats returned their same team that they've had for the last 4 years. Perennial contender, like I said, always a top 8 finisher. You know, Nate, I know, a fellow Philadelphia area team, the Blue Balls. How would you break down this matchup? Just, instant first sight.
Yeah, Blue Balls Meats should be a good one. I know you have Kayvon on that team, Ryan Bush. I think it's a Jimmy Cole as well on that team as well. So yeah, it should be a good game. And
yeah, it's definitely it's 2 veteran teams there. I kind of like that matchup for the Blue Balls. They have a couple good pitchers, Greg Myers, Noah Silverman's on that team. He's been pitching a little bit more. They could really shock the Meats out of the gate here, or at least put some pressure on them. So that should be a fun one. And then, like I said, we've got a rematch of a first round game last year, C4 and SoCal Wiffle. So SoCal Wiffle is a little bit different this year. They've added some players. They're sticking with their core of Stephen Hayden and Dustin Staggs, but they've also added Sawyer Bien and Logan Christie and then Jeremy Adams. So, Nico, let's go to you first. So those young guys there that I just listed, Adams, Sawyer. Yeah, what do you think what do you think they bring to this SoCal team that they were maybe missing last year?
Yeah, I mean, I know that Sawyer, he's definitely an upbeat player. And I think just bring that energy, especially against an experienced team like C4, will really help them, like provide energy and like hope that, I don't want to say hope, but hope that they can win. But yeah, that should be a good matchup. And I mean, I don't want to say there's an upset opportunity, but depending on how it starts, that should be a good game.
And yeah, like Liam, I think you were there, Wiffle in the mid, and back in August, SoCal with that core 3 of Hayden, Staggs, and Sawyer, they won that whole tournament. We're pretty dominant that whole tournament. Like, what's your impressions of the SoCal team, having seen them up close?
Yeah, so I watched almost all, if not all, of SoCal's games, and I think their biggest strength is just kind of, I want to say their chemistry. Like after every pitch, they're always like yelling at each other. They're always like, "Let's go, guys!" Like I think that's honestly their biggest strength is their chemistry. It's going to be certainly interesting to see how Jeremy Adams does. I mean, he's playing in U17 this year, but he's also probably going to win Rookie of the Year in MLW. And I mean, he's coming back looking for his consecutive U17 title. He's kind of got it all. He's great pitcher, great hitter. But it is going to be interesting to see how he goes against some veterans and Ed Packer and Dan Whitener. I know C4 recently signed Dan Whitener actually to that team. So I think he's going to play a big impact for them, especially on the pitching side of the things. And especially for SoCal, I think a big question mark is going to be, I know Steven Hayden was kind of the guy at Mitten as far as like speaking like pool play innings. Like, I mean, he shut it down in all of pool play and then the first couple games of bracket play too. His riser, honestly, might have the most movement on a riser I've ever seen. So I think he's going to actually be a big guy to watch at this tournament.
No, I agree with that. Steven Hayden's one of my favorite players of the last couple of years that's kind of emerged, and I think he's got the experience now. I'm interested in seeing what he does.
Yeah.
All right. So before we move on here, I kind of want to throw out a few questions before we get deeper into this draw here. Just kind of get the temperature of the room, see what everyone's thinking on some different things. So before we move on here, just a few questions to throw out, and then we'll revisit these questions after we're done with the draw and see if any of the outcomes have changed any of our opinions on any of this. But we got 3 questions here for our panel. So the first one is under the radar, your long shot pick. Give us your hottest takes you can give us here. Who's your long shot pick to reach Sunday, to reach the final 8? Let's start with you, Liam.
My long shot pick is the UWIFF Mojo. I honestly think they're a long shot pick to not only make Sunday but win the tournament. Connor Jaso, in the one time that I've seen him, he throws the hardest with the wiffle ball that I've ever seen in my life. I think he topped out at like 99, and he wasn't even fully throwing. If he was 100% locked in, I bet he's touching like mid 100s. Like honestly, like probably like 104, 105. He can probably get up to. Jackson Pearson's definitely another arm to watch. I've actually been practicing with him a little bit lately, and he's put on a lot of velo, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see where he pitches. I'd say kind of a question mark about the team is hitting, but I mean, as far as pitching and pitching depth and pitching aces, I think the UWIFF Mojo can go head to head with anybody.
No, that's a great pick, and they've definitely got a good mix of veteran players and younger players as well. Nate, who do you got for your surprise pick to make the final 8?
Final 8, I will go with. I will say, let's see here. Okay, come back to me on that one, actually.
Okay. Nico, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I will say I think the LV Whifflers have one of the best shot to win the whole tournament, especially with the addition of Randy Dalby. I mean, they basically have 2 aces now in Dalby and Bonet, and they're expected to do well, but I think especially with those 2 arms, I think they're really going to make it far this tournament and surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's it. They made the final 8 last year, but we're kind of out of bullets by the time they made that. So I think the addition of Randy can really help them extend into Saturday and get Jordan fresher going into Sunday. Texas Tim, who do you got?
So I'm not repeating what they're saying, but I'd already had it written down with hey, Liam, you might want to mute your mic. We can hear you typing. So that's okay. So I like the Mojo as well, looking at that roster, and I don't think that it's a long shot to win. So you asked long shot first. That's one I have. The other one that I like, and it's not just because the Texas guy, is Punishment, bringing back their core and adding Chase Oliver. I've seen Chase throw a little bit lately. If he comes back anywhere close to form, I believe that they pushed the Canes last year in extra innings and barely lost that game. So Punishment is another long shot to make it to Sunday. That was the question, I think. So I like the Mojo and Punishment as long shots. And I'm going to go with Nico. I already had them wrote down, the Las Vegas Whifflers with Dalby. You can never count that guy out, man. He's already a legend. And that really good team just added one of the best pitchers and players in the game. And so that's going to be scary. One other one, if we're talking about winning it, I think that the Phenoms, could it be their breakout year? They have just been right there on the cusp, bridesmaids and barely missing out. I really like those guys a lot, and the passion they bring to the sport. So could it be their year?
Yeah, no, those are all great picks. Especially yeah, I agree with the Phenoms. They're there every year and they're just kind of waiting for their break to get over the hump. All right, Nate, what do you got for us? Sorry for putting you on the spot earlier.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm not trying to be biased, but I do like Ridley Park. I know they've had some unfortunate luck in years past, but I do believe with the roster that they have this year, they can definitely make a run to Sunday and go deep. They have one of the more deeper pitching rotations in the tournament. So yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, I like that team a lot. I gave Dylan some suggestions on how he should break up the Ridley Park teams this year. He didn't listen to me, but I still like the way they ended up. And I still think that's probably their best 5 guys they can put forward. And they're just looking for a break. They've hit the skull crushers the last 2 years. They had to face Reed and Mike Whitty in the final 24 and final 16 the last 2 years. If they kind of get a little bit better of a draw, I think this could be their year. So I really like that pick. So we'll get back to the draw here. We've got a couple more questions. We'll just kind of pepper them in here throughout here. So guys, next question coming up is contender, big name team that you think will have an early exit this year. So kind of the opposite of this first question we asked, who's someone you expect to make it to Sunday that you think could stumble? And we'll get to that in a few. All right, Tim, whenever you're ready, we're going to go to Group B. This is game 1. All right, we've got the MLW All-Stars. And just pause right here, Tim, real quick. So it's a different look MLW All-Stars team. We got Kyle Schultz, Nick Saylor, RJ Walgate, Dallas Allen, and who am I missing? And Jimmy Norp. So a little bit different look here. We'll get into that a little bit later on. We'll see who they're facing. They will face the Las Vegas Whifflers, who we just talked about. That should be a fun opening game matchup for sure. All right, got Las Vegas Knights, who are basically I don't know what word you would use, but sort of a cousin of the Las Vegas Whifflers here. A couple bonnets, a couple trapezes, one bonnet, and Peter Bach could be making his return to the field or to the tournament. So we could see a Las Vegas Whifflers, Las Vegas Knights matchup in the second round, but they'll face a long ball, so it won't be easy if Las Vegas Knights have to win to get there. This is a different long balls team than we see during the regular season, but a very competitive one. Dylan Harshaw, Colin Polak, who are the regular members of the long balls, longtime members of the long balls, and they're joined by find my thing here. They're joined by Tyler Nockbar, John Polanco, and who am I missing? John. Yeah, that's 4 of the 5, but that's a really tough team. That team struggled last year a little bit, but they should be a lot improved this year. They got Jack LaBerria. How can I forget Jack LaBerria? That's kind of the big addition this year. Jack's finally done playing baseball. He's pitching again in wiffle ball, so that should be a really good first round matchup between 2 veteran teams. So I'll take over the screen here real quick, Tim, and we'll run down a couple of these matchups before we move on. All right. So in Group 2, like I said, we got MLW All-Stars, Las Vegas Whifflers. I don't know. So I know we're only through 4 games now, but to me, that's kind of one of the standout matchups of the first round there. MLW, they've reached the final 16 in their first year in UWIFF back in 2021. They haven't been back that far since. Nate, what do they need to do to beat the Las Vegas Whifflers or hang with them at least?
I would say pitching is going to be a big thing for them. I know they added Dallas and RJ this year, so maybe one of them can go the first game, and then I also just get in the batch rolling that you never know who they're going to. I think Las Vegas Whifflers might throw Dobby that first game. Who knows? But just getting the batch rolling that game as well.
Yeah, I think pitching's definitely going to be the key for them and just finding that right starter game one. Then we have Las Vegas Knights long balls. This Las Vegas Knights team, I think the most interesting thing to watch for them in game one is Bruce Trapeze, who's the son of Matt Trapeze, will be making. I don't know if it's his competitive wiffle ball debut or it's not his competitive wiffle ball debut because he qualified with them out in a Peter Maccabee's SoCal tournament, but certainly making his national stage debut. Obviously, the comparison that comes to mind is Jordan Bonet, another second generation Las Vegas star. That's a lot of pressure to put on Bruce here in his first tournament, but that'll definitely be a game to watch to see what Bruce has. You know, Jordan did a similar thing back in 2020. He came in as a relative unknown. He had played in some tournaments and even played in some national tournaments before 2020 UWIFF, but he really made his name there. So that'll definitely be one to watch as well. So let's get back to the draw, Tim, if you want to take over. We'll get to our second question after we draw these next four teams in Group C. All right, so we have the Blue Jays out of New England, out of Massachusetts, out of ECW. This is the Rob Sutton captain team. And they will take on the Annapolis Horsemen in game one. That's an interesting game. All right, we've got 603 Wiffle Club turning their usual roster with one notable re-addition, which we'll get to in a second. And they will play Ridley Park, who we talked about a little bit earlier, who's Nate's pick to shock us all and make Sunday. So let's go over these matchups just real quickly here. Get a couple of interesting matchups here. So let's start with Blue Jays Annapolis Horsemen. Yeah, this is a real interesting one to me. You've got some young players from both the New England area and then the Mid-Atlantic area. And then also on the Annapolis Horsemen, they've added a couple of players from Arizona, a couple of players that have graduated out of the U17 tournament. So let's maybe start with you, Nico, on the Roses, Logan and Luke. Have you got a chance to see him play? And if so, you know, what's your thoughts on what they could bring to the Horsemen in terms of pitching, hitting, all around, you know, additions to their roster?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be key. They bring a lot of like young talent to the team. And I mean, I know the Horsemen, they haven't panned out too well in past tournaments, but I think adding these new two players will really be helpful to get over the hump. And we'll see it. It really could go either way, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to Jacob Holofsky, who's a regular member of the Horsemen. I think he's one of the more underrated pitchers in the country right now. He's held some, you know, really, really good teams, you know, be it Earl, you know, with other teams in Mid-Atlantic. He's hasn't had that results yet, right? He's that young pitcher trying to get over the hump, but he's held them down to one run over, you know, 5-6 inning games. I think he also adds a lot to that team. And Blue Jays have some good players from the Stu crew in ECW, and that'll be a really fun game to watch if you want to watch some players who you probably haven't got a lot of hype, maybe haven't seen a ton before compete against each other. And our second game in this bracket is 603 Ridley Park, and I think this is probably our heaviest hitter game of the tournament so far. So let's start with you, Liam. This is kind of, to me, this is kind of like a pick. Do you have any thoughts on 603 Ridley Park? You're muted, Liam.
Sorry about that.
You good?
Yeah. So I mean, 603, great all around squad. I know they last year actually shock of the tournament. A couple of other guys left and joined Black Dog Country Club, and then 603 wound up beating Black Dog Country Club, which I thought was pretty cool. And so, I mean, I believe, did they make? Were they eliminated in 16 or 8 last year? Because I do remember them making it pretty far.
16 Soppers eliminated them Saturday night.
Yep. So, I mean, just overall a good squad. They got some good young talent on the team, and I think, I think 603 is a solid sleeper pick to make it to 16 or even make it Sunday. Honestly.
Yeah, 603 is one of those teams that's always in the mix. I think they've made the final 16. I should have this pulled up, but I think they've made this final 16 all four prior times. So they're always in that mix. And again, it's just what draw you get. And so they're also 603 is also returning Pat Leahy, who's, a cornerstone member of the franchise going back many, many years. Texas Tim, what do you think Pat brings to, they also have Briggio now and they've got Lopes, they got these, young players. What does he bring to this, squad? It's a really mix of veteran players and younger players.
Well, the mix is good. You need the veterans. I think that you look at the past winners of this tournament, especially. There's definitely not younger players that are on these winning teams, right? There's not 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds typically on the teams that are winning it. And we're only talking about really two winners so far. So, but they have the veteran presence and know how to win, know how to pace themselves, know how to calm their nerves in those moments. I've seen the Juggernauts do it. I've seen Usual Suspects do it. Juggernauts were down and out. They were, 2 years ago, we felt like they were on the brink of elimination, and all of a sudden, the home run brings them back, and that energy just switches right there. And Usual Suspects, the same thing. They just were steady. They know how to play the game. You definitely need that mix. So those veterans, probably 5 years ago, those veterans weren't even in the game, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And UWIFF brought them back out, and I'm very thankful for that, to see some of those guys coming back out. And you're right. This will be a big game. The Ridley Park has some of the best players on the East Coast, and definitely they're seasoned and know how to play the game. So that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Tim. Like during the Mid-Atlantic Championship series between the Long Balls and the Juggernauts, Tom Gannon and I were talking about Ridley Park and just how prolific they've been at creating players. And the only other sort of comparison we could give to that was kind of like mid-2000s Golden Stick, which is basically what 603, got their start in. The veteran 603 players, that is. So like, yeah, it's two kind of, teams, one a little bit younger than the other, but that have grown up in this game, all local, kind of come out of their own thing. This is gonna be a heavyweight matchup. I really kind of like this for Ridley Park. I feel like they're gonna have to really think through their pitching matchup here. I think it's gonna force them to concentrate early on, which I think is a good thing. And yeah, this so far through 8 games, this is the game to watch. I think our 6 games, this is the game to watch. So let's pause this really quickly before we move on, and then we'll just go through really quickly here, Tim, D and E, and then we'll talk about both of those together. But before we get to that, let's get to the next question that we have here. One contender, big name team. Again, we just have 2 big name teams in 603 Ridley. So these would definitely be possible answers for this question. I want each of you to give me one big name team that you think is, that most people would say is likely to make Sunday, who you think, maybe just doesn't have it just this year. Maybe their roster's not right. Maybe there's something else that you don't like that you think is going to go wrong. Let's start with Nico, if you're ready to go, on who your big name contending team is that's going to miss Sunday.
This is definitely a hot take, but I'm gonna go with UWIFF Inc. Now, they did lose Dan Whitener, and I think that will be very vital for them now that they lost that. They did sign Ray, but especially on Saturday, they're gonna have to rely on Ray and Didio really to get them through those late night matchups, unless they want to throw Styles Saturday night. But I mean, it's a hot take, but now that they lost Whitener, I don't know. It'll be tough.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. That definitely changes the dynamic of that team, and how they respond to that will definitely be a story. Who do you got, Liam?
Again, kind of a controversial take could be, but my pick is actually CCW. So they just won NWLA. I mean, I know Whitty throws fast and Reed Werner throws really fast. They're both really good, but I mean, from what it sounds like, they've been playing a lot of like yellow bat, clean ball, and just the difference in game between NWLA and UWIFs is just so massive. And in like a 2-week turnaround, I just don't see them getting enough reps with knife ball and big bat, even if they were to play like almost every day, to adjust from all summer. Because I mean, they won NWLA. I'm gonna assume they've been training clean ball. I'm gonna assume they've been training clean ball almost all summer. I just don't see them getting enough reps with big bats and knife balls. So they're my.
I think this is the turnaround from both the style and just the time. I think that's definitely like a good point. It could either elevate them, right? Like they're riding a high now. They've got a lot of momentum going. They could really ride that, into another great performance here. Or is it just too much of a turnaround, both in time and switching balls? So I guess a great point. Nate, who do you got?
Hot take. I actually have the meats actually in that case. They're always very good, but I think pitching definitely scares me a little bit about this team.
Yeah, and they definitely have some decisions to make. So last year, Caleb Yonkman pitched their Saturday games for them, or at least most of their Saturday games, and got them through to Sunday. And then they kind of faltered in their first Sunday game. So they've got some interesting decisions to make, whether they move Yonkman, to more sort of a Saturday night, Sunday role, or if they keep him in that. So again, a veteran team that's made 3 Final Eights. It's kind of hard. I love this take because it's kind of the ultimate hot take. They've been one of the prolific Sunday teams. But you can definitely see sometimes when those gears start to go, you kind of can overthink things. It'll be interesting to see what the meats do pitching wise.
Yeah, it's just a hot take, but it's just a hot take.
I like it. That's what the show's about. What do you got, Tim?
So here's the veteran move. Guys, you guys are young. You making these 3 picks, you are giving them chalkboard material, bulletin board material. I'm not picking anybody. That's the veteran move right now because all 3 of these teams are going to walk by y'all all weekend taunting you as they make the 16. And that's fine if you can take it. But there is no way, Paul, that I would pick anybody to not make the 16 because I like all these guys. I don't want them giving me a hard time.
No, that's a veteran move in multiple ways there, Tim. That's a smart pick. But yeah, I like all of those 3 that we got to. That's the thing about this tournament is there's so many variables, so many things that can go wrong or that can go right. And those are 3 teams that do have kind of more question marks for them that, again, we're talking about teams that we expect to make the Final 8 and we'd be surprised if they don't. So it's all kind of a compliment in a roundabout way. All right, Tim, if you want to bring back up the wheel, we're going to go through D and E here before we talk about both of these in conjunction. So we're going to go 8 teams in a row here. We're going to start with team 1, game 1 of Group D. All right, got Lit City, second UWIFF team. Interesting team. And they will face the Samurai Tigers, who we'll talk about after we're done with these 2 games. A little bit different look than we expected from them, and another really interesting team. That's going to be a fun first round game. All right, the aforementioned UWIFF Inc. pulling in game 2, team 1 of Group D. See who they'll face. They will face Roadkill, who, if I gave my pick earlier on who my under the radar team was to turn heads, that would be my team. All right, so just pause here real quickly, Tim. So just to be clear, we're going to go over to Group E now. Team 1, game 1. We're going to do Group D. We just did Group D. We're going to do Group E. Then we'll pause and we'll talk about these last 2 groups and the first segment here. All right. Also aforementioned, the CCW Skull Crushers will lead off Group E. Let's see who they'll face. They will face the Stompers. That's another rematch from last year. I can't remember if that was game 1 for these teams or not. If it wasn't game 1, it was early. That should also be a really good one. Lots of power pitchers on both of those teams. All right. Cajuns are team 1 in game 2 of Group E out of Las Vegas. they've got a good, interesting roster this year. And they will be facing Old Line Wiffle Club, which means we've effectively avoided Old Line taking on the Dragons in the first game, and that's always a good thing. They always seem to come up against each other. So let's pause here and we will go over groups E and D in just a second here. All right. So Lit City Samurai Tigers, like I said, the Tigers unfortunately had a couple of their players from Japan who were unable to make it very late. Their international exception still applied. So I'm sorry, their captain will still be captaining the team, Igarashi. Both Quentin Meyer and Ethan Wider, who are original members of the Tigers on this year's roster, are still on the roster, and they'll be joined by Andrew Montero and Brandon Crone. So I kind of want to talk about Brandon Crone here. I don't know who wants to. All right, Liam, you want to talk about him? This is another really good young arm to watch. We saw him in Pittsburgh at the MAW tournament. This is a player to really keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, so I actually went against Brandon Crone. I played him in a tournament, NWL, or not officially, but a charity called Strikeout.
I don't know if we lost Liam there, if we lost Can anyone else hear me?
Yeah, we're still
We're
good.
here.
Okay.
We're still
Okay.
here.
Anyone else want to talk about, as we wait for Liam to come back, talk about Crone? If not, I can give my thoughts from watching him up close.
Yeah, I know he has his own league. It was a JWL up in New York. From the videos I see, it looks pretty solid. I also saw the highlights from the MAW tournament up in Pittsburgh, and definitely a very solid arm. So it should be interesting to watch him go against the arms in the United Wiffle tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I got disconnected from the
You're
call
good.
right as I was talking. My bad. But I actually went against him in a tournament out in Pittsburgh, and he's a good all around pitcher. I wouldn't necessarily call him like a solid Sunday guy, but definitely a guy on the rise. Definitely a guy with a lot of passion for the game. We actually played each other. He threw 3 scoreless innings I want to say 5 scoreless innings against us, and I think the game ended in a 0-0 tie. But I mean, Brandon Crone, he's got a good arm. Up and coming talent. He's just overall he's got a real nice screwball riser mix, and then occasional break out a curveball too. And I mean, I think he is one of the most underrated on the come up players. So
Yeah, I kind of pride myself on knowing under the radar players, and I had no idea who he was until Ethan and Jake brought him to the Pittsburgh MAW tournament. Really impressed me. His mechanics are just so solid, and he just has that pitch mix. He's definitely a guy to watch. And what's also interesting about this is there's kind of a UWIFF connection here because Ethan Weiner played all year in UWIFF. Quentin Myers and a UWIFF player. They'll be going against a UWIFF team in Lit City, which is basically the UWIFF Miracle. A little bit different composition than last year, and they had a really good tournament last year. They beat Ridley Park the very first game last year. They made the elimination round going 2-1. So that should be a really fun matchup as well. And then on the Tigers, I want to, I'm very interested in seeing Igarashi. I've been watching his videos, and he's definitely improved a ton since the first tournament. So looking forward to seeing what he's going to do here. Then we have UWIFF Inc. Roadkill in game number 2. So Texas Tim, I'm going to throw to you on this. So UWIFF Inc. essentially traded Dan Whitener for Ray Luttick. When we talk about sort of perennial Sunday teams, they're one of them. They're always in the mix. Let's talk about that sort of trade. What do you think that does for them? What do you think, whether it's chemistry wise, playing wise? How do you think that impacts their tournament?
I think chemistry wise, it probably fits very well, and I think the addition is, I think it makes them a better team. No, Ray's a great pitcher in his own right, but I really think that this is really going to help them get to Sunday and have the depth that they may need to, when they do get to Sunday. So this is always a team that you never want to see
Yeah.
drawn that you're having to play against, because they can beat you at any time, and you know and they can hit. So that's I really think this is a good team. I don't know anything about the team they're playing, so you know, I do know UWIFF Inc. is I think arguably would be the favorite. I think you were going to comment on Roadkill.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you throwing it to me there. Yeah, Roadkill is probably and this will probably jinx some. I'm probably going to give them the Paul Cook jinx here. They're my team that I'm probably most excited to sort of see how they do. And it's for a multitude of reasons. So first of all, this is a really young team, a lot of like high school, college age kids, but they've played together basically all season and they've won all season. They're out of the BWBL in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. They won the BWBL charity tournament back in May. And, you know, just a lot of BWBL teams have won that tournament. They won the BWBL regular season, kind of going away with it. You know, they didn't run away with it, but they were the best team during the season. They're the best team during the playoffs. And then they won the Keystone State Games, which is a Pennsylvania amateur sports competition. And in that tournament, they beat the York Yaks, who's basically the way too beautiful team in this tournament. They had all their guys. They had Skip, they had Coos, they had Bull, they had Potter, and Roadkill beat them twice to win that tournament. This is a team a young team that's won together. They kind of remind me, Tim, of some of these like fast plastic teams that you saw in like the mid 2000s that kind of were younger, came up together, came out of nowhere. Maybe even like a rookies, like with Josh Pagano. Like I'm not saying that they're that good, but you know what I mean. Like just stuff, you know, they've won together, they've learned how to win together, they know their style. Teddy Krause is a really good pitcher. Nick Pugh is a really good pitcher. They've obviously drawn a tough draw in game one here against UWIFF Inc. But I'm interested in seeing what they can do and how they can bounce back from this, or how they could, you know, shock the world and beat UWIFF Inc. in game one. This is another game that you want to mark on your calendar for early on Saturday for sure. And then let's head over to Group E real quick. Let me share my screen again just so we can see what that looks like. All right. So we have CCW Skull Crusher Stompers. Again, this is a rematch from last year. This should not be another game that you mark on your calendar to watch. The Skull Crushers won it last year, I believe 1-0 over the Stompers. These are two really good teams, two really game tested teams. This should be a really good one. Like, Nate, what do you think the X factor is in this game? If you had to pick an X factor.
Ooh, I'm biased. That's the end of the game. Pitching. That's all it is. Who's going to limit the least amount of runs? That's the biggest thing.
Nico, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Now that Sean Ryan kind of semi-retired, they signed Andreas Fink, and I think that's one of the most underrated signings, especially for this team in pool play. And I mean, he's very underrated. He's a great bat, and I know he has a good arm, so possibly they might throw him, but I think he might be definitely the X factor in that game.
No, I think that's a good call. I think Fink is one of the better hitters that like maybe people outside of like, you know, MAW don't really know or appreciate. And if he hasn't played a lot of fast pitch this year, so that could be a hindrance to him. He has played some, you know, medium pitch up in Golden Stick Yard, but if he gets going, that could really be an X factor. I think that's a great call, Nico. And then we have Cajun's old line. This Cajuns roster is interesting to me. I don't know, Texas Tim. Well, can you tell us, and I don't know if he's played any of your tournaments, can you tell us anything about Connor Rennerrath? Have you seen him pitch?
So I got a little rundown on him today. I have not seen him pitch. He did come down here and play in the fast pitch tournament that I was not here for. He's been playing up in the Texas League up in Frisco area, and he's really one of their better pitchers, if not the best pitcher up there. But the scouting report I'm getting today is that, you know, he doesn't have a lot of fast pitch experience, so they're not really sure how that's going to go. But the chemistry of that team is really good.
Yeah.
And they've played together before, and adding this addition, which was a calculated addition, right? So they picked up a player. I mean, Will Marshall and is a savvy player, and Lede is also a very smart coach manager for this team. I don't believe that they'd have picked him up if he wasn't somebody they felt was really going to help them out. However, their fifth player in the past typically hasn't gotten to pitch much. So we'll see if he will be one of those guys that they will lean on early in the tournament.
Yeah, no, I think that's a solid analysis of the Cajuns. That's always kind of my thing with the Cajuns. It's just like you said, they've got great chemistry. They've got a lot of veteran players. It's just kind of who are they going to pitch and when are they going to pitch them, and do they have one guy that's going to kind of get hot? They always kind of change those fourth and fifth spots, and is it Connor this year? Is Nick Martinez going to go off at the plate? Is Paul Marshall going to have a great tour? Like they kind of have these options, and they also are one of those veteran teams that know how to stick around, and they could go 1-2 like they did last year and easily end up in the final 16 like they did last year. So one of those sneaky good veteran teams. All right, so let me just show real quick here, just so everyone can kind of see before we go back to Tim and the wheel. We've gone through the first half of all of the brackets. So we've drawn the first 20 teams. We're going to go to the bottom half of the bracket, starting with Group A. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw games 3 and 4 in Group A, and then go around to Group B. So Tim, whenever you're ready, you can share your screen.
There are a lot of really good teams left.
There could be some
I was about to
interesting
say, there's a whole
matchups.
bunch of teams left on this team that are pretty good.
All right, so we got the Shotgun All-Stars. There are one replacement team this year. Oops. Which is a thing that I think we probably want to shout out. We've usually had like 3 or 4 replacement teams. This is our only one, and they qualified as well. So that's kind of cool. Versus Way Too Beautiful. So that'd be cool. We'll get Joe Walters will be playing for Shotgun All-Stars, and for a long time, GSWL fans, they'll remember Joe Walters. He was supposed to play on Way Too Beautiful at the 2020 UWIFF tournament. I think he had a prior engagement. He ended up having to drop out for, but that would got to be some old school GSWL guys in Milstead and Skip versus Joe Walters. All right, so game 4 in Group A. Phenoms will be team number 1 in that game. We'll see what they're going to play in a second here. They will play the Canes, so that's up there with one of our biggest games. It's not our biggest game in game 1. And,
that is the biggest game of the.
That's what you would take that over. Let's see what are our other options.
That is the biggest game.
Yeah, looking at the thing. So yeah, over CCW Skull Crushers, I think is probably
Absolutely.
second. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So Nate, what do you? Not to put you on the spot, but you said biggest game. So we got Phenoms, Canes. These are 2 games that made Sunday 2 years in a row.
2 years
Phenoms are
ago.
always a contender. Who do you got?
Oh, it's a tough one. I don't want to. Why put me on a spot? Wow.
I'm sorry, you you interrupted me. I had to.
Oh, sorry about that.
Anyone want to go out on a limb here? Liam, come on.
Yeah, so one thing about this is I just think it's definitely going to be interesting because these are 2 teams that I personally have picked and I think have a very good chance of going to Sunday top 8. I think Canes, it's going to be interesting to see who they pitch because I know they certainly want to save Cam and Coop. At least Coop definitely for Saturday night, but Cam definitely for Sunday. So I don't know if they maybe give the ball to Torres or maybe even you could see Laundro or Stengel on the mound. But I mean, I think the Phenoms are just an all-around great team. Jordan Robles, tournament MVP frontrunner, in my opinion. I mean, you have 5 solid, good pitchers on this team. I think Phenoms are, without a doubt, the most deep team in the tournament. I think any of those 5 pitchers can win a game for you, and I think that my personal pick for this game is Phenoms.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of those coin flip games, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I kind of like to see a Connor Kenny Stengel first game matchup there, pitching wise. I think they should make a gentleman's agreement and do that. but yeah, that's definitely I'm with you, Nate. That's the game of the tournament so far here in the prelims. We'll see if we can, like Tim said, there's a lot of big name teams left, so we'll see if we can top that coming down the stretch here. All right, Tim, let's just go right to Group B. All right, so we got the Whiskey Ducks, who have an interesting roster this year. We'll talk about that in a second. And they will face Black Dog Country Club in game number 1. That should be a good game. And our second game of the bottom half of Group B, we have the UWIFF Mojo. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Some really good young arms on that team. Against the Long Island Dumps, a GSWL New York mainstay, and honestly one of my favorite stories from last year's tournament. So the Dumps started 0-2. They beat Bay City in an 0-2 versus 0-2 game, and that was one of my favorite games that at least I got to see a little bit of last year's tournament. It was right before the U17 tournament was about to start. Obviously, Bay City, just with their MLW connections, just where they're located in the country, had a lot of U17 players, fans, hangers on, really rooting for and Matt Schmidt just went out there and just wouldn't give up. Beat Bay City, eliminated them from the tournament. Bay City went 0-3. Then the Dumps went on and they beat the Kalamazoo Keggers to advance to the finals of the comeback round, where they ended up losing to TC 35. But, really had that nice 2-game comeback, type of thing. I love Matt Schmidt. He's such a competitor. He's just a, hard-nosed player. He can pitch all day. He's a really fun guy to watch. So, that should be a fun one against UWIFF Mojo. And I think, was Jackson on Bay City last year? Yeah. So they'll be facing Jackson again here. All right. So we're going to pause Tim real quick here and just go over these matchups in Group A and Group B. I think we already kind of talked about Group A. Texas Tim, got to go for you on the Whiskey Ducks. Let me share my screen. Whiskey Ducks Black Dog Country Club. So Whiskey Ducks have added, last year they had the Austria brothers from Can't Touch Us, and also Nolan. I'm sorry, I forget Nolan's last name. But from Can't Touch This. Those guys aren't available this year, and they've added a couple of players from the What a Swing. So what can you tell us about Cade and Anderson?
Anderson is not a pitcher. He is a fielder and hitter only. I hear he's been throwing some, but I can't attest to that. Now, Cade has attended UWIFF twice before, so he has limited innings there. He has been like we played with TC 35 2 years ago, and last year I think with the Cajuns as their 5th guy. He really didn't get much of a chance to showcase his arm. The Whiskey Ducks has gone through reinvented themselves again last year with the Austria brothers, this year with Cade. And so Cade's a really good pitcher. I am interested to see him throw and be the guy. He has been the guy brought by 2 previous teams to be, my cleanup pitcher, or if we need you, whatever. So this is his breakout season right here. If he is going to have his name mentioned as a breakout player, this is his opportunity to do that. And so he is got a young, lively arm. He can struggle sometimes with the control. He's got the stuff. And so if he can bang the zone, I think he'll be effective. Now, but they drew a really tough opponent and right off the bat. So we'll see how they handle that. They don't back down from anybody. I'll tell you, the Whiskey Ducks will go in there talking trash right off the bat. Doesn't matter if they're playing the Jugs or anybody else like that. Jason's going to go in there and say, we got you. And until you know what? Here, shoot your shot right here.
No, that's what I've always loved about the Whiskey Ducks. So they signed up out of nowhere for I think you kind of had some contact with them, Tim, before they signed up for the 2020 UWIFF tournament, but otherwise hadn't played much. And, even before any of that stuff, they started talking a lot of trash. And, you got to give them credit. They're there every year. They compete every year. They've turned themselves into a really good team. They won one of the Cedar Park tournaments this year, right? I'm pretty sure.
They have done really well this year on the tournament scene here in Texas. Really, really well.
Yeah, so obviously a very tough opponent, like you said, they're going to go down firing. Okay, so before we move on here, we've kind of gotten lucky, so I don't want to push my luck anymore. The third question we can ask now, and it's still clean because both the Juggernauts and Usual Suspects are still on the board. So, fifth year of UWIFF, we've had 4 tournaments, but only 2 champions. Usual Suspects twice, Juggernauts twice. So here's the question I'm posing. Usual Suspects or or Juggernauts winning the tournament versus the rest of the 38 teams. If you had to pick either one of those teams winning the tournaments or just one of the other 38, you don't even have to pick who it is. Are you taking Juggernauts and Usual Suspects? Or are you taking the rest of the field? Let's start with you, Nico.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the rest of the field. I mean, to be honest, there's just so much talented teams. I mean, the Phenom, CCW, obviously with Inc. I knocked them earlier, but they're obviously back. I mean, there's just too many good teams for the same 2 teams to win again. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the rest of the field.
You back it up, Nico, there, Nate, or do you think Suspects or Juggernauts are going to win their third UWIFF tournament?
I can back up Nico on that. I think there's a lot of teams that have a lot of good pitching depth on their teams, and then they have that experience now. So
yeah, those 2 teams know how to navigate a tournament, I think, as well as any other 2 teams in this field. But yeah, there's 38 other really, really good teams. All right, Liam, you going to go out on the ledge here, or are you taking the field?
I'm gonna disagree with you guys, Nico and Nate. There's a reason they've won it every year. Ryan McElrath is, I think, the best wiffle ball pitcher out there. I think Ben Stan is the best wiffle ball hitter out there. I think usual suspects are really good. I mean, they've won it every year. They know what the winning, because at least for me, like when I'm playing in a big game, like the biggest thing is it's a lot of it is mental. I mean, you can talk about pitching, you can talk about hitting, but if you don't have the mental game there, I mean, nothing's going to work. Your team is not going to win if you don't have the mental game. And Usual Suspects and Jugs are 2 teams that are proven to have the mental game to be at that top tier. Jugs just won Maw again this year, which is really big. Red with the walk-off home run, which is pretty cool. And I mean, I just think they have the mental capacity. I think they've been there before. There's a reason they've been there before. I think they one of those teams 3 beats.
Yeah, and you were talking about this earlier, Tim, just about how you kind of look at the teams that have gone far, look at the teams that have won the tournament, and it's not because these, a lot of the younger players or even players that aren't so young now that have had a lot of experience aren't good. It's just sometimes to win these tournaments, it's just those veteran teams that know how to get through the tournament.
I agree, and I really like the Usual Suspects. Those guys are great. Danny Lanigan's a very good friend of mine. Nobody on this panel hardly is ever going to pick them, which both times that they've won, nobody's picked them except Lanigan and his team. And that's a fact. And no one's going to pick them again this year. And that's okay with them. And I will tell you on the Juggernauts, they have a little Texas flair this year. So, they're going to be solid too. I will, though, if I was a betting man, I'd put my money on the field because there's 2 or 3 really good teams that I really like that I think they're going to push it. It's just so hard to win. I'm actually been surprised that we have had repeat winners, to be honest with you, because 4 years ago or 3 years ago in the second year, I didn't think we'd have that again anytime soon. And we've only had 2 teams win it in 4 years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm surprised we're even asking this question, but that's a testament, I think, to those 2 teams as well. But yeah, a lot of good answers there. I'd probably take the field too, just based on the pure odds. But both of those teams have overcome the odds so many times, so you never know. All right, Tim, let's bring back up the wheel. Keep this rolling here. We could still see these guys play in the first game here. I'm going to try to speak that into existence. All right, and there we go. Half of that's done. Usual suspects. Hold on. Okay, and we won't get that first round matchup of the suspects and the Jugs, but the abominable Wiffle Men, probably my favorite team name of the tournament. Yukon Cornelius. All right, Slaughterhouse, a fellow BWBL team with the abominable Wiffle Men. They'll take on the Dragons. All right, let's keep it rolling, Tim, into Group B, to Group D here. All right, so I got the Wiffleaholics. It's our first team in Game 3 of Group D. They will face the North Stars, who were also a great story last year, came in 0-6, ended up winning their first 2 games. After the prior tournament, they had some really good games. They almost upset Black Dog Country Club in their opener the year prior. They really kind of broke out last year, and I like this team a lot too. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. Punishment out of Texas, out of Austin, Texas. They will face the Freaks, which are our second Japanese team. This is a full Japanese roster here. Let's just go through Group B and then we can roll back on that. We might as well just finish this up. We don't want to keep these 4 teams having to wait here. So go ahead, Ted. You can bring the wheel back up. Okay, or Tim's not going to bring the wheel back up. Okay, there he is. We've got the Gargoyles out of Pennsylvania. They will face the Juggernauts in game number 1, our second to last game to fill here. So we know what this will be, but we'll spin the wheel anyway. This should be a good game. New School Risers versus the Kalamazoo Keggers. And I actually want to start here because I like this game a lot. So let's start here in Group B with the Risers and Keggers. I think it's a really even matchup. I like both of these rosters. The Keggers are without Grant Miller. They were without him last year, but he didn't compete in the tournament. Then Grant went to UWIFF Inc. this year, of course. But they still kind of have their core. They've got Brendan Baranowski, Mike Hogan, Nate Thompson. So Thompson and Hogan they're 2 of the best NWA tournament pitchers, over probably the entire tournament's history. They've gotten more and more competitive in this tournament. They feel like they're just on the cusp of breaking out. And they also added Caden Irwin late, and I really like that addition. I think that brings a lot to them. And then the Risers, you got Cap, who's just, the veteran of all veterans, really veteran team with Jerry Hill and Chris Owen, and then Ben Doolan, who's one of the youngest, one of the great young stars of the game is what I meant to say. So I think that's like a really fun matchup, a really interesting matchup. They break this down for us. This first round match, our last match of the opening round.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be competitive. I like you said, I do like the addition of Caden to Keggers. I am very curious to see who Risers will throw that first game though. It could be Cap.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
I think that's probably the big question for the Risers throughout this tournament. It's just, who they pitch and when they pitch them. Do they just try to ride Doolan early and often? Do they try to go Cap and save Doolan? What do they do?
Right.
Nico, if you were managing, what would you do this first game? If you're Cap, who are you pitching against Kalamazoo?
If I was Cap, I think I'd pitch myself. I mean, I'm Doolan. He's young. He's fiery. I mean, a great all-around pitcher, and I think I'd definitely want to save him not for too long, but definitely to the later stages of the tournament. And obviously, the experience also I think will be helpful against the Keggers. So yeah, I'd pitch Cap.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with probably either of those guys for sure. Um, let's see here. So let's talk about Dragon Slaughterhouse, kind of going back over to Group C, right over here. I think this is also another
Very underrated matchup for sure.
very underrated matchup. I think it's incredibly even. Um, Same question that we just talked about with the risers, but to you, Liam, and I'm giving you double the task here. If you're the manager of both teams, who do you pitch in this opening game, knowing who your opponent is? So if you're
Um,
Slaughterhouse and Dragons,
So at least my mentally wise is if we win our first game, that's big. So if I'm looking at things from the Slaughterhouse side, Jake Sullivan, he's probably not the best pitcher on the team, but he's up there. He's absolutely nasty. I'm going with him. I'm probably I mean this first game is very important to win. Dragons are going to be one of the best teams who are going to play of the day. And I think Sully's the best guy. I mean, it's going to pitch. He's got the riser drop mix that we all know. Absolutely nasty. He did have a little bit of control problems at the mitten, but that was with sanded balls. But the last time and every time we've really seen him with knife balls, especially at Maw and Pittsford this summer, I mean, he's just looked really, really good. So I think pitching Sully game one, because he also has a really, really durable arm as well. So he actually threw a Maw tournament on Saturday and then threw a full other tournament, the Pittsford tournament I played, and I actually played against him. On Sunday. And I mean, he's honestly genuinely one of the nastiest pitchers I went against. And so I think pitching Sully is going to be real smart for the Slaughterhouse and hopefully get ahead and get a quick win. And now, if you're looking at it from the Dragon side of things, the Dragons are a pretty deep roster. I mean, we all know Nick Leah, the captain, the kind of the face of the franchise, the guy that's like, I mean, he's the lefty. Everybody knows Nick Lee. I highly doubt they pitch him now, though. They're probably going to want to save him. So I could see them going to someone like Dougie Baker, a younger guy based out of Massachusetts, to kind of like at least fill the void for the Dragons.
yeah, I kind of hope that you're right on that. A Dougie Jake first game matchup, I think would be a ton of fun. I think it'd be a really intense game. Those are two really intense competitors. Different kind of pitchers. Both of those teams are different kind of teams, but it gives us a kind of their styles. But like that, yeah, like I hope you're right, Liam. I would pay to see a Dougie Jake matchup here in the first game. All right, so jumping over to Group D, I'm gonna go to you first, Tim. So Punishment is returning most of their normal roster. They made one veteran addition in TC35's Chase Oliver. Punishment's always been a team that's been like right in the middle of the pack. You and I talked about their game just recently that they had a couple of years ago where they played the Canes and almost knocked them off under the lights Saturday night. It was a really long game, a really intense game. To me, they feel like they're just Punishment always feels like they're on the doorstep of breaking through. Do you think this is their year?
You know, I think I think they're in a good group. I'll just put it that way to make a move instead of, I think the Freaks have a tough game for themselves. Being new to these rules, I don't know if there was an easy game for them, right? So
Yeah.
and I think that's always going to be a task. Again, I think they already have two, three. They already had three good pitchers on their roster, and if Chase Oliver comes in and throws close to what I've seen him throw we've seen him throw in the past couple of years, that's going to be a difference maker because Jackson is not going to be one of their best pitchers, but he's one of the best hitters in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so when now you have four good pitchers and you need just a couple of them to be on during, the early part of the tournament. I think they can make some waves.
Yeah, I agree. I think they got a bracket where they can do some stuff in multiple different ways. And again, this will be a game to watch because Punishment is always a good team, always a competitive team. Also, a couple of years ago, they took on WIFF Inc. in their first game. Like that was one of my favorite games of. Can't remember if that was 23. I think it was 22. They took them on there. So always competitive. And then the Freaks, of course, full Japanese team are. We've got two Japanese teams this year, but there are one full one. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. The only person we've seen so far is Kaisuke Ujima, who was part of the Wiffle Tigers in 2022. He's branched out on his own, has four other players here. We just don't know a whole lot about him. And like, that's the beauty of this tournament. That's the beauty of this game is you're going to see a lot of guys that you haven't seen before and really can see if they can, just see what they have. And this is like I think this is the perfect game for the Freaks game one. They're going to get, they're going to obviously be the underdogs, but it's not, it's a team that's kind of been middle of the pack. So they're going to test themselves right away. They're going to see where they're going to stand. And I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch. I also want to shout out the Wiffleaholics North Stars game here. Also in Group D, I think that's going to be a really fun game. Again, North Stars last year went 2-0 after starting 0-6 in their first two tournaments. They got a lot of good players, out there from Minnesota. The Wolfaholics roster is kind of different this year. They had some late turnovers, but that's a really interesting roster. Ryan Patnote, again, is one of those players we talked about, one of those veteran players that just kind of knows how to win. Jimmy Flynn is trying to make a comeback here. Chris Perrell is a very underrated player out of Fanway Wiffle Ball League, and he's been a member of the Wiffleaholics a few seasons. So I think that's going to be a really fun matchup. And I also think both the winners and losers games from this, bottom half of Block D are going to be a lot of fun. I think, however it sort of shakes out, I think you're going to have two good games coming out of there. Okay, so let me try to zoom out here a little bit so we can. Oops, I'm zooming in instead. Oops, way too far. All right. Oops, now way too far the other way. All right. So seeing all these on one screen, I don't know if everyone can see it now. Now it's very small. I don't know. I kind of take a look at this. I don't think there's a death bracket necessarily. Does anyone differ? And if so, which is it? Or do we think these are kind of pretty even brackets?
I don't think there's a death bracket, compared to the years past. I don't look at a bracket and look at it and go, oh my goodness, one of these 8 teams are going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't get that feeling looking at any of these because I think we all can look at it and go, oh, okay, I can see them going 0-3. Right. So I don't look at any of these and go, wow, somebody's going home.
What do you think, Liam? Do you think, one bracket stand out for you? It doesn't have to be a death bracket. Does one bracket stand out for you in any sort of way?
I mean, if you want to scroll over a bit to Group E, I think that one, honestly, that one's a little tricky, especially for some like I think the CCW and Stompers. This is going to be one of the premier matchups of the I don't know if we're starting at 8 a.m. or of the first game slot. I think this is going to be a premier matchup. I think this is going to be one of the best teams. I think honestly, the winner of the CCW and Stompers game wins the bracket. I think that the rest of the teams are going to have I didn't even see Juggernauts in the bottom. So I think, okay, let me rephrase that. I think the winner of the CCW and Stompers bracket is going to play Juggernauts in the 2-0 match. But I mean, this bracket has got some of the top tier, some really, really top tier talent in it. So I think that is arguably one of the best brackets.
Yeah. Also, if CCW beats the Stompers and makes it 2-0 against the Jugs, that'll be the same year last year they faced off in the 2-0 games. And that was a great game. I think Will Smithy pitched a perfect game.
Mm-hmm.
Reed Werner came up clutch with a bomb. But yeah, that should be a good rematch if it happens.
Yeah, I agree. Also, Group B is not looking too bad either. You got MLW, you got Las Vegas, you got Black Dog Country Club, you got Mo with Mojo, my sleeper pick, and the LV Knights and Whiskey Ducks. And I mean, really the long balls too. They've been they've been really up there in Maw. I think they actually won the regular season in Maw or finished second. And then I know they finished second in Maw. So they've been up there, top tier talent, still looking for that championship, but they've they've kind of been dominating this year. And I think that division as well has a lot of like natural talent in it.
Yeah, I think those are all good picks. They, what do you think? Anything stick out to you?
I'm gonna say Group A is looking. I would say if you had to pick like a
Yeah.
quote unquote death bracket, Group A, because if you look at all the teams in this bracket, you got Meats, you have C4, you have Phenoms, Canes. Way Too Beautiful is a good team. Even Blue Balls. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
one of those teams is going to miss out. So I would look at Group A as like a group that stands out to me.
No, I really like that call. I think I probably agree. Like, just if you're looking at who's got maybe the best, 4 teams in one group, Meats, Phenoms, Canes, and C4 is hard to beat. And then you go to the 5th team, and it's Way Too Beautiful. And Way Too Beautiful's, perennial top 16, 16 finisher in this tournament. And then you have the Blue Balls who can beat anyone. And then SoCal Wiffle,
Yeah,
who
SoCal, yeah. You look at them, they have a very like young roster that can scrap out wins. So yeah, I would.
yeah, I mean, SoCal Wiffle won. Sorry, Nate, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but yeah, I mean, SoCal Wiffle won the biggest tournament of the year so far, right? Like Wiffle in the mid and by the numbers had the most, teams. So that's a really stacked bracket. So I agree with that. I think that's probably the one. If you want to watch one pool here early in the day on Saturday, it's probably this one. But again, we saw last year, and this is a part of this tournament. We saw all 4 teams that came through the comeback bracket who started 1 and 2. All 4 of those teams made the final 16. So if you're in this Group A and you go 1 and 2, you don't want to go in 3. You don't want to get eliminated. But if you go 1 and 2, you got a shot. You just have to, you've played your hardest wiffle ball in the morning, and you just have to find a way to come back versus the other 1 and 2 teams. So there's always a shot, and there's always a way to come back, which is the cool part about this tournament. All right, so I want to really quickly revisit our 3 questions that we talked about earlier. Now that we know the draw, has anything changed in any of our opinions on these questions? So first of all, under the radar, long shot pick to reach Sunday. I should have been writing down people's responses. I wasn't, so I hope all of you remember your own responses. Would anyone change their response now, knowing what the brackets are? The team that you picked to make the final 8 on Sunday. Now that you know the brackets, you know who they're playing early on. Would you change your call, or are you still sticking with it? Let's start with you, Liam.
So I think honestly that the team, I mean, with Mojo, they've got, I don't want to call it an easy matchup, but I mean, Jackson Pearson's out there. He's looking for revenge against Long Island, who kind of ripped Bay City's hearts out of the game last year. I remember there's a really controversial call on the field, and Jackson wasn't happy about that. And I'm sure Jackson's ready. I've heard he's been training a lot. And I think they go out there, they win that game. They beat the winner of Whiskey Ducks and Black Dog Country Club, which is going to be a challenge because both of those teams are legit. But if they get through Dumps and then they get through Whiskey Ducks and Black Dog Country Club, I see no reason why they don't make Sunday. But I think it's really going to come down to if they can take care of Dumps and then beat that second team in there. That's a really big game there.
It's all about getting that momentum. Go ahead, Tim.
I see an obstacle for them. The obstacle is Las Vegas Whifflers, more than likely, in my opinion. So, again, I think I did pick Mojo, but I actually think, again, they are going to be highly favored against the Dumps. But if they beat the Dumps, it doesn't get, their next 2 games are going to be killer. And if they don't do well there, it's going to put them in a hole. So they can win their first game, lose their second 2, which is not out of the question given that bracket, and be 1 and 2 and in trouble. So that it's still a long shot, but I don't think this is an easy route for them to make it to Sunday.
No, I would definitely agree. It's definitely not easy, but if you want to win the tournament, you got to get through the best teams. So I think seeing Las Vegas's second or third pitcher in pool play and being able to see the Whiskey Ducks and Black Dog Country Club second or third pitcher in pool play is going to be nice for Mojo to kind of get going. in the mornings. I highly doubt, unless they go 1-2, which is definitely a realistic chance of happening. They'd bring out Jaso to pitch out against in like the 1-2 survivor bracket. But I mean, if they win either, if they beat it's there, I really think their whole Saturday comes down to, or not their whole Saturday, but their whole pool play comes down to that game against Whiskey Ducks and Black Duck Country Club. They may even want to think about pitching Jackson Pearson that game because it's such a big game. If they win that game, they can, I don't want to say take it a little easy against LV, but I mean, you're basically in the round of 16 already, and you need not in the round of 16, but you need a win or two more. And I think if they bring out, maybe not Jaso, but bring out maybe like someone like Sam Skibby, Jordan Smith, or Jackson Pearson to pitch against Whiskey Ducks and Black Dog Country Club, I think that's going to be a big game for them. Also, the winner of that game is going to be coming off kind of a barn burner big game. So they could be, Whiskey Ducks and Black Dog Country Club could be a little tired coming off of that game versus a team that's arguably better. I mean, again, this is assuming they take care of dumps, which is by no means an easy task, but I mean, I would definitely pick Mojo to be favored in that game.
Nico, you sticking with your pick or what?
I do think they have a good shot, the LV Whifflers, but also I noticed the punishment. I think definitely, especially with Chase Oliver and Drew Dobbins, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think they're gonna beat the Freaks, and then Whiffaholics North Stars. By no means is that an easy matchup, but say they pitch Dobbins or Oliver, I think they can get through that. And then obviously Whiffink, who I picked to miss. I don't know about that now, seeing their bracket, but I definitely think the punishment, especially after losing some tough games in past years, I think they're going to come out with some fire this tournament, and I think they're going to make it to Sunday possibly.
I love that pick. I think if you kind of look at this, I think punishment's definitely someone I think all of us could have picked just before this, of just being a under the radar team that could have made Sunday. And you kind of look at their bracket now, and again, it depends on who they get in the elimination round and all that, just completely unknown. But yeah, they definitely have a path there. What do you think, Dave, on your pick? You sticking with it?
Yeah, Ridley Park. Yeah, I see. Like, I'm looking at Group C right now, and I mean, hot take. This could be a sneaky number 1 seed in the Group C. I know, obviously, Usual Suspects won the national championship last year. Oh, sorry, world championship. I'm sorry. But I like the pitching depth that Ridley Park has. You have Cam Farrell, you have Teddy Dretcher, Sean Being here. I don't think Brendan Boas is going to be there for day 1, from what I'm hearing.
That's the rumor, yeah.
That's rumor. Yeah, but just having those 3 guys right there, guys that can eat innings, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they go 3-0. Now, obviously, you have the Dragons, you have the Usual Suspects and 603 in your group, but I do like the Ridley Park pick.
Yeah, and I do too. And I think the fact that the Dragons and Usual Suspects are in that bottom half of the bracket, almost kind of, that 603 game is going to be the game. Like you can't look past that. That's the one they've got to win. But then if Usual Suspects are going to have to play Slaughterhouse or Dragons, that's not going to be an easy pitching matchup no matter who they play. So if you're kind of just looking at the favorites, then Usual Suspects, if they're somehow like they always are able to come out of that and they're 2-0, they're going to be beat up a little because they've had they're going to have a tough second game opponent, and Ridley Park just has that pitching depth. They've got literally 5 pitchers they can just keep going. So I like that.
Like you said, 603 is going to be that game that kind of decides
100%.
They dictate how they do it. So
going back into Ridley Park's Suspects pitching depth, I'm pretty sure I heard a rumor that Ryan Wood is back and pitching this year. I heard he threw this summer in Golden Stick after getting an injury last year, some offseason surgery, and I think the addition of him on the mound for Suspects is going to be really good for them.
Yeah, and I also think, it's pretty predictable that the Suspects are going to beat the Whifflemen. The Whifflemen did sign Blake Hoffman, a player who's been kind of out of the game for a little bit, but I know he's been working and putting in some work. So obviously, I presume the Suspects will win, but don't just count them out, because I think the Whifflemen will put up a better fight than most may think.
Yeah, so Blake Hoffman, actually, we hosted a tournament back in mid-September. Weiner was there, and he actually played with Blake Hoffman. I believe Blake Hoffman and Ethan Weiner, Hoffman threw all the games for them. They went 2-0 on pool play. They beat Jackson and Preston. Blake threw a shutout against Jackson and Preston, and then Blake also threw a shutout against some guys from our wiffle ball league that you guys probably wouldn't know, but some also talented guys. And then they went out and beat another team. They played us, myself and Ty Forensic in the semifinals. We beat them because Blake Hoffman, Blake Hoffman was going into his 4th game pitching that day. But I mean, he was still thrown with good velo. And I think Blake Hoffman really has the chance to be that game changer for the downhill wiffleman.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. No, again, if nothing else, it's a game that again, you can look at this whole tournament and there's really no easy games. There's always tough opponents. And, that plays a big role in this. You may win a game, but how much did you spend in winning that game? And Abdominal Wiffle men have a lot of veterans, including Blake. That's going to be a tough matchup for the suspects, and whoever they play second is going to be a tough matchup. All right. In terms of the Contender big name team that have an early exit, does anyone want to change now? I think Nico kind of already said his answer. So we know that with Inc. You can look at their bracket here. So, there's definitely a path and a road you can see there. So that makes sense. Anyone else want to change their pick, or or anyone want to double down on their pick?
I'm actually going to change my pick a little bit. I think a team that actually, and it sounds a little bit shocking, but I think a team that actually has a decent chance to not make Sunday that has been like in Sunday and in the contention is C4. They got a solid matchup against SoCal game 1, who just are coming off that wiffle in the mitten win. I'm not saying that it was necessarily a mall tournament, but there still was a lot of competition and a really, really solid tournament for Scuffball Yellow Bat. I think if SoCal Wiffle Ball wins that game, they're going to be playing the loser of Meats and Blue Balls. And if they lose that game to another solid opponent, chances are they're going to be 0-2, looking to play someone like the Shotgun All Stars or Way Too Beautiful, because I don't see either of them beating Canes or Phenoms. But I mean, even 1-2. Now we know C4 is not the most deep team. I want to say they just signed Whitener, but still, even with the signage of Dan Whitener, they're not the most deep team. I don't see them playing 4 games on Saturday morning, trying to make back through the 1 and 2 pool. And then now you're going into Saturday night. You're going to have to exhaust all your arms. I just don't see a future where they make Sunday purely because of pitching depth and just how hard of the pool they got.
I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I mean, these past 2 tournaments, they've not made Sunday, which is very uncharacteristic of these experienced players. And I think just, especially with signing Dan Whitener now, they're just going to really want it this tournament. And I see them going very far.
I'm gonna jump on with Nico right there. I know who's on this team, and if no one wants to play C4, right? I mean, they're another team that nobody really wants to play because, I mean, you don't have Steffi on the team anymore, but Steffi hasn't been Steffi in the last couple of years. He hadn't dedicated himself to whiffs. He's playing baseball all the time now, and so I think the addition of Dan is going to help them. And I agree with Nico. I think they have something to prove.
I can also add on. I mean, this is a team that won the championship for Fast Plastic, 3 years in a row, I believe. So they know how to win as well. So we always talk about the usual suspects and jugs, for United Wiffle Ball. But when you look at Fast Plastic, and even GSWL, because I know like Norris and Packer were in T-Weg
and Wackerson,
yeah, those guys know how to win, so they're going to figure a way out how to win. So
yeah. We were talking before we went on the air. Just I kind of think the addition of Widener is a big one. I feel like they've kind of turned over the team a little bit. They had Acosta a year ago. Now they've got Widener. I kind of feel like, this is a chance for them to be rejuvenated, right? Like they've got, veteran players, but it's a different roster. It kind of feels different for them. And I wouldn't bet against, C4 getting back to their usual C4 ways this year.
Also forgot Giant Casas on that 2020 team that won the United Wiffle Ball. So
yeah, can't bet against Johnny Whiffs for sure. So speaking of the usual suspects, has anyone's opinion changed on juggernauts and suspects versus the field? Let me just reshare my screen here to show who the suspects and jugs have, because I think that'll kind of influence everyone's decisions here. So this is the suspects field, group 6. And then we've got the jugs. Where are the jugs? They are over in group E.
Group
So
E.
here's the 2 fields we're looking at. Does anyone think the jugs are suspects? Now seeing the draw, would you change your opinion if you took the field versus them? Or is it still everyone's sticking?
I'm definitely gonna stay, I think, by picking the field. I mean, I don't want to say they obviously have a great shot, but I mean, seeing these brackets, I mean, the Jugs, they're gonna have to possibly face CCW or the Stompers, and then usual suspects. I mean, Ridley Park, 603, also the Dragons, underrated. I mean, they're obviously gonna be the favorite, but I'm still gonna stick with the field.
I agree with Nico.
Field.
I'm still gonna stick with my pick of the Jugs. I think they're gonna easily cruise through, or the Jugs or the suspects. I think Jugs cruise through a 2-0 finish, and I think they throw. I heard a rumor. I definitely could be wrong on this, but is Stant able to pitch this year at UFs?
Oh yeah,
Yes, yeah.
Stan's pitched very well all year at MAW. Like he may be one of their bigger game pitchers in this tournament,
Oh,
depending on how
I
they
mean,
roll it
and
out.
then I want to say they signed. I will have to double check this. So they
Luke
signed
Richter.
out of
Richter.
Texas. Richter will probably throw the first 2 games of pool play, but I mean they have all 3 of their arms. They got Red, McElrath, we would probably say for Sunday, and Stant all ready to go for the game against CCW. They'll probably throw Stant or Red that game, and if they go 3-0, I mean they just need 1 win in the round of 16 to make it to Sunday, and I think a solid chance of not only winning and going 3-0, but also having a fully healthy Ryan McElrath on the squad for Sunday, which, I mean, like we've seen Ryan like carry innings on Saturday night when the Jugs have gotten into trouble and still dominate on Sunday. I think a fully healthy Ryan is unstoppable.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against them. And before we get to our final question here and wrap up, I think we'd be remiss, Tim, if we didn't go to you on what Luke Richter could mean for the Juggernauts.
Well, my hot take is you may not see him throw at all. So the team's loaded with pitching. I mean, Luke is one of the best hitters in the game too. So he's going to bring, they didn't need anything really. I mean, they're a great team without him, but adding him a good stick. If we see him throw, I don't think you see him. My personal opinion, I don't have inside information, but I don't think you may not see him throw as much as you may anticipate. And if that's the case, that means the Jugs are playing well.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to watch how they roll out their rotation. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, 2022, they used Ray in pool play. Last year, they didn't use Ray in pool play. They ended up not using Ray at all pitching. So they're a team that's willing to kind of do different things. So it will be interesting to see how they kind of use all their options and how they roll them out. All right. So speaking of the Juggernauts, who are always one of the favorites to win this tournament, let's put it all on the line here. I'll exclude you, Tim, as tournament director. You need to remain impartial. But the other 3, Liam, Nico, and Nate, you see all the brackets now. Who's your pick to win it all? Who wants to start?
I can start if you want. My official pick to win it all will be UWIFF Inc. Multiple reasons. First off, I don't want to say they have necessarily the easiest schedule. They have to play Roadkill, but the winner, they get to play Samurai Tigers or Lit City first round, who neither 2 of the teams are the most experienced teams. And I think that if UWIFF Inc. takes care of Roadkill and then Lit City Samurai Tigers, they're already looking at 2-0. They'll likely face punishment, or you could potentially see them facing Wiffaholics down in the game of the last match of pool play. I think they have a very, very realistic chance to go 3-0. I think Grant Miller on the team, the recent signing is going to be real big for them. They got Miller, Luddick, Styles, and Rogers that can all throw. They'll probably honestly save Styles for Sunday, but because I mean he is one of the fastest pitchers in the tournament. But if you can get through 3-0 of pool play and you still have Styles ready to go. You can throw like Luddick or Kenny Rogers throughout Saturday night. And if you can get to Sunday with Styles being somewhat fresh, I think Whiffink has the best chance to win.
All right, so we got one vote for Whiffink.
Wait, Liam, hold on a second. Go back a question. You picked the juggernauts and not the field. And now he asked you who's going to win, and you picked the field.
Well, so I'm picking my pick that's not the juggernauts or the usual suspects. These are my kind of like sleeper picks. Obviously juggernauts are really good. If I had to pick a team that's not, because I've been talking about the Jugs a lot, team that's not the Jugs is Whiffink, but I mean I could see either Whiffink or Jugs winning.
Wait, you got to pick one. You're going Jugs or Whiffink?
I mean, that's a good question, man. I mean, I said Jugs earlier. I just talked about Whiffink, but I think if the Jugs don't win this year, I'll be real surprised. So I'm going to go Jugs. But Whiffink is my official pick that's outside of the Jugs and usual suspects.
All right, so I don't know how to slice through that, but it's either Whiffink or the Jugs there. Liam's picking. Does any Nico, Nate, who do you got? One of those two teams, or are we going out on a different traction here?
I'm going on a different track. I'm going to pick the Phenoms. So, I mean, 2019 came up just short. Obviously, crushing game for them against C4. Close. I mean, all of UWIFF they battled in 2022. Obviously, heartbreaking loss to the Jugs. And I just think like they really want this, and especially after Earl didn't win MAW, I think they're just going to come with that extra fire and pull it out.
Yeah, they're always a good bet to win this tournament, and this year is no different. And if they come through that Group A, which they pointed out earlier, is going to be there's no easy path out of that group in any of these games. They're going to have a lot of momentum on their side. So I like that pick. Who do you got, Nate?
Yeah, I might have to back Nico on this one. I like the Phenoms. I know they like, and also to mention they were in the Final Four last year. Unfortunately, they lost to the usual suspects, but yeah, I think they're hungry. They're hungry to get back on top.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't bet against the Phenoms in any tournament. And again, like you sometimes look at the draws and you try to look for the teams that have the easier draws, but sometimes you come out of a harder draw, and the Phenoms definitely have, one of the harder brackets. Again, that gives you the momentum. You kind of feel like you've got things rolling. Maybe you've eliminated a team that was going to be a contender down the line for you, and you've already kind of knocked them out of the tournament or put them in a spot where they can't come back. So, always feels like it's their year. Maybe this is it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thanks everyone for going down the line there, giving your picks. We'll see if any of those I think we have the Phenoms. I guess Jugs and Whiffink both. 3 different picks there. Get all sort of your normal contenders. No one's really seeing a big upset here. But yeah, again, going back to our earlier question, that kind of seems like the field. We're taking the field against the Jugs, usual suspects, because besides for Liam's hedge there, we're kind of picking 2 other teams. So
I will say it's going to be
happens.
it's going to be very tough to it's going to be very tough, but we'll see what happens.
It's always a tough road, and I'm sure a lot of the stuff we said here will be proven completely wrong, and stuff we didn't even talk about will happen. That's what always happens, and that's the beauty
absolutely. I know Ben and Chris are going to be right up on me if they see this.
Yep. That's the beauty of this tournament in this game. So we'll see everyone next week. And just real quick before we end here, I want to shout out just a few of our sponsors. Woody's Terminating, Old Line Wiffle Ball, Certified Auto Repair in Columbia, Connecticut, Moonshot Bats, MLW is hosting Friday night Fan Fest. Going back to Moonshot, those bats will be available throughout the weekend. They'll have a big stand set up just like last year. MLW hosting Fan Fest, U17, a lot of stuff. Check them out. I'm sure I'm missing several people here, but we'll get to them throughout this weekend. So thanks everyone. There's a Moonshot right there. If you don't have one, you probably want one. So check them out. on their stand this weekend. Also, special thanks as always to the York Revolution, who are just a great partner for us 5 years in a row. Chris Carbaugh, all the staff there. York Revolution, your 2024 Atlantic League champions as well. So they just wrapped that up on Friday. So that's really cool. Can't wait to see everyone this weekend. Looking like really good weather. I think even good weather for you, Tim. Maybe a little cool at 75, but still, still some nice weather. So hopefully our nicest weather we've had, and we'll see everyone this weekend. And thanks for watching.
That was really great, guys.
Yeah. Wait, is the stream off?
Hold on, let me.
Oh shoot. What's up, Tim?
Hey. Yeah, I think it's off because Paul's gone, but
Gotcha.
actually I don't know. So
It says it's still on. Tim,
We're
it
still
says it's
live.
still
We're
on.
still live.
okay, all right. Well, then we will hang up. But great job, guys. Appreciate it. Liam. We should have the strike zone for you this weekend. So
Awesome. I'm also I'll talk to you about it, but would you mind just checking the UWIFF Instagram DMs and I can talk to you from there.
sure, no problem.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, talk.